I'm a watercolor artist. I started in lettering and then transitioned into illustration and watercolors. So one of the biggest things that I painted over the last couple of years were, there's no better word for it, but houseplants, right? Like plants in a cute pot was basically a lot of what I painted. So that led me into botanicals and eventually gave me this really great opportunity to write a book called Watercolor Botanicals.
Hey, I'm Becca with the Happy Ever Crafter, and in this episode I'm talking to Eunice, or as you might know her, Electric Eunice, and she is walking us through step-by-step how to paint a watercolor rose. She's also giving away a copy of her brand new book, Watercolor Botanicals, to one lucky person, and so make sure you listen carefully to find out how to enter to win your copy. But either way, I know you're going to enjoy this tutorial, so let's jump right in. Eunice, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Becca.
I feel like this has been a long time coming. We've been talking about this for a long time, but you have had quite the past, what do we want to say, year? So it's been a little crazy, and I want you to talk about that. But as part of that, just kind of run us through who you are, what you do for the people who don't know you, and all that stuff.
Sure, I love it. So my name is Eunice, and I go by Electric Eunice on Instagram and as my business name.
Why is that?
And why is that? So I think it was high school. I had a friend call me that randomly, and I think it was just E, like E Electric, and then E Eunice, and then like later down the line, I didn't even use that as a screen name right away. You know, screen name life. AIM life. I didn't even use that as a screen name right away. And I think it stuck after college. And yeah, I think I'm just like a really outgoing, loud person. So Electric made sense. And actually, what's really cute, this is super random. My dad's an electric engineer, and his name is Lloyd. And he recently emailed me from his new email address, Electrical Lloyd. And I was like, what's happening right now?
That's amazing. I love that. Okay, so I interrupted you.
Oh, no, all good. All good. So I'm a watercolor artist. I started in lettering and then transitioned into illustration and watercolors. So one of the biggest things that I painted over the last couple of years were, there's no better word for it, but houseplants, right? Like plants in a cute pot was basically a lot of what I painted. So that led me into botanicals and eventually gave me this really great opportunity to write a book called Watercolor Botanicals.
Yeah. So tell us a little more about that. Because before you tell us, you and I chatted about this beforehand, so the audience doesn't think I'm just like making this up, but Eunice agreed to give away one of her books. So if you're watching this, at any point while you're watching this, just leave a comment down below and you'll be entered in to win the draw. But yeah, tell us a little bit about like how that came to be and what it's all about. And I mean, the title's pretty self-explanatory, but anyway.
Yeah, no, totally. So when I started to write this book and working really closely with my editor, we decided to break it down into 30 projects, or essentially like 30 lessons. And the other thing that was really important to me was making it come from my voice and have it really be like you're reading as if your friend is next to you, painting with you, and giving you, easy, clear instructions on what to do next, right? I didn't want it to be like an extremely technical book, but one that was like a chance for you to relax and paint and just get away from whatever it is that's taking over your life at the moment. So yeah.
Which I have a feeling that's going to be the feeling that people get when they do your lesson in a minute.
Yes.
As soon as I said I have
all the feelings,
like this sentence isn't going to work out.
All the feelings.
So I think we should just like jump in and do it. And then we can talk a little bit more about where people can find you and learn more and stuff.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right, let's get started. So I have all of my tools and materials that I need for the rose tutorial, including my Watercolor Botanicals book, my permanent rose, Viridian Hue, Ivory Black watercolors. In other words, it's a really bright pink, a green, and a black. I have my round 4 and 0 size watercolor brushes, my water jar, paper towel, watercolor paper, and then my foldable mixing palette. You can use a plate, you can use anything. I just have this actually right out of the wrapper that we're going to use today to mix paints. So let's do this. So I'm going to open this up real quick and find our rose tutorial, and you can follow along with me. I cover quite a few botanicals, including some of our favorite flowers, as you just saw. So I'm going to do the day 10 rose. It's on page 68 if you want to follow along and you have my book. I will set this aside. And first, to prep everything, I'm going to actually mix my paints. So for this specific tutorial, all I need is permanent rose and what I call dark green. So dark green is where I'm mixing Viridian Hue. So this is a really bright standard green with a black watercolor. This is creating a darker tint of green. So that's what we're going for here today. So I'm going to just simply squeeze out some permanent rose. It's got some of the oil that came apart in transit. That does happen. Well, we can mix it up. That's what brushes are for. And I'm going to do just a dot of the green. Then I'm actually going to do just a little bit, maybe like half part black. We don't want to do equal parts or else that'll be super, super dark. So I'm going to wet my brush. I'm using my size 4 to just simply prep my paint. Prepping your paint is really just activating your watercolors. Tube watercolors are this like really thick, creamy consistency. So all you need to do is just kind of dilute it a little bit. If you're using like cakes or dried paints, then you're going to be activating it. You're really actually putting water to the paint and making it so you can pick it up with your brush. And then I'm going to clean off my brush before I get over to the green and black. For the green and black, I'm going to just simply mix. As you can see, it's pretty dark, which is what we're going for. And we'll really see the color once we do some swatches on paper. So I'm just kind of going back and forth, adding more water to my brush to really activate this paint color. So if I can, runaway brush. If I can get my paper out and simply do a really quick paint swatch, this is going to be my green. So it's a super dark green. And then I'm going to do that permanent rose just so you can see the color. Oops. It's very important to clean off your brush or else you're going to get muddied colors. Usually when you're mixing your paint, since you're really like immersing your brush into the colors, it can get all up in there. So you want to make sure you're cleaning. It takes a little time. Then here's our permanent rose. Perfect. Mix it up a little bit more there. So those are paint swatches that we're working with today. So in my book, I talk about the exact colors that you need, and again, you don't need tube watercolors. You don't need any specific brand or type of watercolors. I simply also cover like the general color that you're looking for, so you can use anything. So I talk about the colors, I talk about the techniques that you need for each tutorial, and everything you need, which you pretty much saw today. So the first step to our lovely rose is really a very specific stroke, which I call the boomerang stroke. So the boomerang stroke is first a combo stroke. Combo stroke is where you use the very tip of your brush and you put very little pressure. And then as you're moving your brush, you're putting more pressure down. And then you're picking your brush up back again to put light pressure. And therefore getting sort of like, it's a little bit like a teardrop shape. But you're experiencing using the very tip of your brush, the belly of your brush, and then again back to the tip of your brush. So this is a combo stroke. A boomerang stroke is pretty much the same thing except that you're bending it so it looks like a boomerang. So You've got a very light touch with your brush. Then you put pressure down, fan it open, and then you turn the corner, pick up your brush, and you're back to just using the tip of your brush. So this is the boomerang stroke that I'm talking about here. So I reference this type of stroke really often throughout the book for different florals and plants, different shapes. And actually, most specifically for the rose, we use this stroke to build the petals around the center. So yeah, very essential stroke when we're thinking about how to paint the rose. So let's get started. For most florals, I really do start in the very center of the flower. And I do talk about flower anatomy, which is really fun to learn. But I do start from the very center, and I usually build from the center and out. And that does a couple different things. That allows you to really take your time in deciding how big you want your floral to be. It allows you to kind of slow down, kind of build from small to big, which is essentially the way you do any type of painting. You have to start from small to big, from light to dark, in order to get, or to achieve the look that you're looking for. So with the rose, we're going to start with the very center. So the very first step is really to start with pretty much like an apostrophe. So I'm going to press my brush down just a little bit, and I'm going to bring it up just to use the very tip of the brush, kind of like we did with the combo stroke, to start my rose. So I kind of call this like a little apostrophe stroke, first sort of center stroke. And then the second one is actually going to be mirroring this one. It's kind of like yin and yang. So same sort of thing, putting pressure down and sort of completing that circular pattern. And then I'm going to build 3 petals around this center. So in a way, you are almost building in a triangle pattern. You'll see it once we get there, but I'm always going to look for technically 3 sides. So I'm going to start with my combo stroke here. So I'm going to curve it around this center. I'm going to start, always my next stroke is going to start on the outside of the previous stroke. So I'm going to overlap it a little bit, do my boomerang combo stroke, and then also do a third one on this side. So this is our first sort of ring of petals around the center of the rose. So if you can see, do you see the triangle happening here? It's happening. Okay, so from here, I am going to continue sort of the same pattern, and I'm looking to always start my next stroke around the center of the boomerangs of the other strokes, right? I never want to start another round of petals that literally mirror the first round, because it just won't look, it's just not natural, right? So I'm always going to start in the middle, and same thing, I'm going to just do a boomerang stroke, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to exactly look like a boomerang each time. That's kind of the beauty of nature and botanicals and plants. So this is essentially creating this look where the petals are, fanning out, and they're surrounding the centerpiece, and it continues to build. So organic edges like that are perfect. It does not have to be exactly that same boomerang stroke each time. And so again, the key here is just to keep building. So you're looking for opportunities to sort of start again from the center or in different spaces. So I actually started right here. I saw the little space right there. And elongate your petals each time, right? Because again, your flower is fanning open. So you want it to elongate all the way around the edges and not stay the same size all the way around. So the hardest part is to know when to stop. That's my problem. So I've done 1, 2, 3. This is my third sort of ring of petals. I'm going to want to do maybe 1 or 2 more that really show the rose fanning open. So I see kind of an opportunity here, so I'm going to do, here we go, a combo stroke, but really bring it out and elongate it. And then I kind of see an opportunity right here too. So I want to kind of bring that out right here. I could keep going, but I'm not going to because, yeah. I always make the mistake of continuing and then I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I just create? So here is my first rose. What I like to do from here is clean off my brush and get some of the dark green that we created, that we mixed, and I want to paint the sepals. The sepals are those little leaves that sit right at the stem of your flower. So they tend to peek out right under your petals. Rose sepals are pretty small and delicate looking. So just doing a little, and I always keep a little bit of negative space between different colors, unless I want them to blend, right? Because as you know, this layer is still fairly wet. I always keep a little bit of space so that I'm not blending the pink and the green. So let's do another sepal here. And I'll do another one right here. Why not? So I'm just kind of painting like the very end of these leaves that sit right under the flower. Let's do the stem. So I'm just doing kind of a loose curve, right? You can kind of thicken it up right under the rose. And I'm actually going to add one of the most prominent features of the rose is the thorns. So I'm just kind of doing a little triangle shape all the way down. And what I've done in the book as well is I have you add a little bit of pink to these thorns. I think you guys, if you do take a look at a real rose, the thorns do actually have a warm hue to them. So I just clean my brush, and while it's still wet, I'm just going to drop some pink into where I painted these thorns. Yay! Okay, so here's my rose. As you know, we have some layers that are still wet. In my book, I talk a lot about how important it is to paint in layers for watercolors. A lot of times when you paint watercolors, and if you're impatient like me, I'm very impatient, you'll get frustrated because when you paint your first layer of something, it won't look like what you want it to look like because it requires a second layer of shading or color correction, and then it requires an additional layer of details, right? So there are a lot of different layers that go into creating something out of watercolors. At this point, we've done technically 2 layers, right? Since I already dropped some color into, or the pink into the green stem. So we want to wait for this to dry, and then we'll do a detail layer that will really make the rose pop and give it some contour lines, give it some depth basically, instead of just being a flat image. So as I wait for that to dry, I can paint a couple more roses, and you can see sort of the variations that you can play around with here. So let's do a little bit of a smaller one. And this is meant to be kind of like a mix between a loose rose, like a loose watercolor abstract rose, and a more like realistic one. I want you guys to have fun here and not stress too hard on making things look perfect, which is really, I feel like, the theme throughout my entire book. Really just enjoy the act of painting. That's the whole goal here, is just to have fun. Take some time for yourself. Be creative without any pressure. And there we go. So there's some little ones right there. My guy over here looks pretty dry. Just the center. I'm actually going to help the center out a little bit and just dab it dry. So all I'm doing is taking some dry paper towel and just dabbing it real quick. And then I'm going to take my size 0. So I love the size 0 brush, size 0 or size 1. It's super thin that you can do some really great details with it. So we're on to our detail layer. So here's the key. Anytime you use the same color watercolor paint over a previous layer that's already been dried, it will always be darker. That's just the way watercolors works. Watercolors lightens as you let it dry. So I'm taking the same permanent rose color. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to paint in really thin contour lines. So contour lines really allow you to see the direction the petals are opening or folding or creasing, right? So contour lines really help you understand sort of the shape of different objects, and also like how that shape is relevant to even the other shapes around it, or for example, these petals and how they're sitting on top of each other. So contour lines are really important, and also add just a really special touch of detail to your botanicals. So I'll start from the outer petals. And when you're thinking about it, these outer petals are really sort of, they're pointing up and folding out, right? So when we're thinking about that, we want to draw or paint contour lines where we're sort of curving them from the center outwards, right? So we're going to kind of do that here. So they could be of different lengths of lines, right? So I'm starting from the center of each petal and having them, here we go, span all the way around. So you'll get a lot better at this as you practice. You'll start to understand, like, okay, if I want this petal to look like it's opening this way, you know, I'm going to need to use these types of lines or curve my lines this direction to really give it that look. Another really great way to learn this is to study photographs of botanicals or whatever it is that you're painting. Like, look at the shadows, look at the way the object is, you know, the shape of the object is sort of representing itself in your eyes, and you can kind of start to imagine what the contour lines would look like. So really small details. I also like to not just do them from the bottom of the petal or like the inside of the petal out, but I also like to do the very edges of the petals too, just a little bit. So in a sense, these are like pretty subtle strokes, but I just feel like they make such a big difference in your paintings. So in here, just a little bit wet, so it's going to fade a little bit, but I can always go back and add some more. But there you go. So that adds detailed lines and gives your rose or your flower a little bit of a pop. So for these sepals, we're going to go ahead and get some of the green. I always like to add just a line detail in the center of the leaves. Leaves are a little dark, but it would basically look like this. So this is the vein of the leaf or the sepal. Yay! Awesome.
Cool. Well, I have to say, I remember specifically when I started, I don't consider myself a very good watercolor painter.
Nice.
But I remember specifically when I was first getting started, and I with calligraphy and lettering, I wanted to learn how to paint a couple little florals just to accompany things.
Yes.
Rose was one of the first ones. And I remember struggling with it so hard. And you see all these tutorials where it's just draw the boomerang shape and then keep making it, and just is not as easy as it looked in those tutorials. But this one I feel actually broke it down properly. And so I think I'll actually be able to do it. And I'm really excited to see that. So because I'm sure people will find that really helpful and want more. And I know that the book obviously has it all, but where else can people find you? Do you have other tutorial videos? Do you have other stuff like that? What's the best place for people to get more?
Yes, good question. So I'm most active on Instagram. You can find me usually posting videos there, hyperlapsed and real-time videos if you want a good place to kind of just see how a piece is made or a work in progress. On YouTube also, I'm starting to upload more videos, especially now that the book is out. I can start providing more instruction around there. So you can also find me there. And
get the book. Just Amazon?
Yes. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target are a couple of the places. You might be able to find it at your local bookstore if you do want to support your local bookstore, which I highly recommend as well. But for the most part, for sure, Amazon, Target, and Barnes and Noble.
Cool. Well, I feel like most people will be ordering from Amazon right now anyway, with all that's happening, but
very true.
Cool. Well, Eunice, thank you so much for coming on. I know you are, in a unique position right now. Unique. Eunice.
Yes, that could have been a screen name.
Well, yeah.
I like it.
I mean, that seems fitting too. But what I was going to say is that I feel like you're in a unique position where you are in quarantine right now with a very young baby.
Yes.
So I know that you probably have a lot to do today, and I don't need to take up too much more of your time.
No, this is amazing. This is the best type of break from the madness. Yeah. Cool. Thank you for having me, Becca.
And congrats on the baby and all the fun things. And thanks for coming on.
Yay. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to spend time with you.
Oh, and everybody, make sure you leave a comment down below because we are going to draw a winner for that beautiful book.
Yay. I hope you guys enjoy.
All right, Eunice, I'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Becca.